Hi, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about some of the suspension options you have with S60 and V70R Volvos. These cars came from the factory with very interesting and complex suspension called the 4C suspension system. 4C stands for Continuously Controllable Chassis Concept. The idea is you have two accelerometers on the front struts and two ride height sensors on the rear shocks that all communicate to the central brain that basically can soften and firm up the shocks depending if you're taking a left turn, a right turn, accelerating or braking. On top of that, there is a button on the dash that can allow you to have the car ride very smoothly or in a sport mode or an advanced sport mode for track-like driving. As this car ages, this can present some problems. Oftentimes, a lot of these cars will have a little error message on the display that says chassis or suspension settings service required. Basically, one of the elements, whether it's an accelerometer, a shock, a strut, has basically failed and is no longer communicating with the brains of the system. Now, all this is fixable, but it all depends on some of the intentions you have with the car. You can replace the struts with factory units. Monroe is the manufacturer that now sells them, even though the system was developed by Öhlin. You can lower the car with coil overs, or you can go a bit of a custom route and put some Bilsteins on the car, which actually do not have an application specifically for these, so there's some custom work involved there. Let's talk a little bit about all the pros and cons. Replacing with factory suspension was always something that I wanted to do because I like the fact that the system works, it's well integrated, and it makes the car special. So what I decided to do personally was to replace all the shocks in the front and rear with Monroes, but at the same time I decided to lower it with springs. Only several companies make springs for this car. Off the top of my head, there's Elevate, there's IPD, and TME. When you decide to lower your car and keep factory geometry shocks and struts on it, you run into some issues of suspension travel. Let me show you. This right here is a factory 4C front unit off this very car. As you can see, there is reasonable amounts of travel. Let's call that, 8 inches. As you lower the car down onto its wheels, this squeezes down to about, let's say, 6 inches. So you have 6 inches to travel, so every bump you have that much travel. Now think about it, if you lower the car an inch, you're losing another inch of this travel, which means the car will have a tendency to bottom out. This can be fixed, of course, by jacking up the spring rate, which also can affect the ride. So you have to have a set of springs that are very well matched to the shocks in the car for the car to ride well and have a bit of a lowered stance. After some research, I decided to go with TME. They lower the front a little bit more than the rear, but they do jack up the spring rate quite a bit, and they lower very minimally. Turns out that the car rides very well, and actually is a little bit better over big bumps and undulations because it doesn't bottom out as much. Something that seems to be overlooked a lot is when you do rebuild your suspension, please put new bump stops in. Bump stops are what help the car when it bottoms out to not jar too hard and bottom out the shock and break it. Other options out there include going custom. So I've seen people put Bilsteins on these cars. There's a drop-in placement for the front. I believe it's just off of factory V70 or factory S60 front-wheel drive car. However, the rears, they cause some more issues because there is no direct replacement Bilstein shock for the rear that has the spring perch and the right attachment points. I know some people have used successfully some Jaguar units, and they basically have had to make some spacers and kind of fashion a rear spring mount with some luck. And that could be advantageous. Why? Because the cost is going to be less than these 4C shocks. They seem to have a longer shelf life. These 4C shock absorbers seem to be good for about 60 to 80,000 miles, and I know typically Bilsteins do last over 100,000. But you do lose functionality of the 4C system, which some people like, some people don't. Personally, I like it. I like the idea. It's just cool 2000s era technology. Last option is to go coil overs. As far as I know, BC Coils and KW Coils are the two manufacturers that make setups for this car. The BC is, it's a fairly nice system, as in that what BC likes to do, going back to my demonstration before, they shorten this body typically so that as the car rides lower, you don't lose travel. So that's a cool little trick, and they usually have that with an adjustable preload. However, BCs are on the lower end of the price bracket out there. Quality seems to be fairly good. Do your own research, see if they fit your build, but it seems like they're an option for somebody who wants to go low, have a great ride, and want to have everything, right? You buy BC coils, you get shocks, springs, everything, strut hats with adjustable camber plates, all in one, plug and play. KWs have an incredible reputation. They're stainless steel units. The V2s are what are available for this car. They're adjustable. Very, very high end. I'm not sure they do that trick where they shorten the body of the shock. I do know they're experts at matching the spring to the valving of the shocks. So that might be another option for you, but they're considerably more expensive than the BCs out there. The last three options, Bilsteins, BCs, and KWs, all will make the system go into alarm. It'll throw that setting again, chassis suspension settings, service required. To go around this, what people have figured out is that you can actually take your factory unit. Let me grab this one again. And cut it to where you pull the sensor and pigtail out from the factory unit on all four corners. Then you plug it back into the car with the solenoid, and that effectively tricks the car into believing the system's there. The buttons on the dash will no longer work. Other than advanced, will still give you the better, sharper throttle response. However, of course, the comfort levels won't change. So that is, one of the options that people have figured out, and it seems to work fairly well for them. With all that in mind, whenever you're deciding on suspension, you got to ask, what do you want out of the car? Is it aesthetics? Is it pure handling? Is it ride comfort? All those things don't necessarily always end up with the same result. Depending if you live in a heavily congested city with a lot of potholes, like I do, or if you live in very smooth paved suburbs, you can go by with different compromises. So with all that in mind, pick what seems to be the best option for you. Most of these cars will probably need some or all of that system replaced if you buy them used. So, you have to be ready to spend some cash and time making that decision. Hey, thanks for watching.